Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content and 7 Bucks Productions. June 1940. The sun is golden over the Chateau de Milande, but the air in France is cold with the shadow of the swastika. Josephine Baker, the most famous woman on the planet, stands in her foyer as a sharp, rhythmic pounding echoes against the heavy oak doors. She opens the door to find 2 Gestapo agents standing on the threshold, their leather trench coats a stark black stain against the beauty of her estate. To them, she is La Baker, the legendary jazz age icon, the dancer who took Paris by storm and the most photographed face in the world. She is a celebrity, a national treasure, and surely, they think, an easy target for a little civilized questioning about the locals. Messieurs, she purrs, her voice as smooth as the silk of her gown. Please come in. What could this possibly be about? She leads them to the heart of the chateau, offering them tea and flashing the world-famous blinding smile. She is charming, she is witty, and she is playing the performance of her life. Because less than 20 feet away, behind a false wall in her pantry, 3 French resistance operatives are holding their breath in a secret room. They are surrounded by crates of ammunition, high-powered rifles, and enough explosives to level a bridge, all of which are destined for the Maquis fighters hiding in the hills. The Gestapo agents are captivated. They sip their tea, charmed by the international star, never suspecting that the woman laughing at their jokes is a high-ranking intelligence officer for the Free French Forces. Josephine Baker has spent her entire life fighting inequality on the stage and injustice in the streets of St. Louis, New York, and Paris. Now, face to face with the ultimate evil, she doesn't flinch. She knows that if that pantry door creaks, her life is over. But she also knows that a woman who has already conquered the world isn't about to be intimidated by a couple of men in armbands. Hello, and welcome back to Badass of the Week, the show where we tell the badass history of badasses. My name is Ben Thompson, and I am joined today by a very special guest. She is a creator, educator, storyteller, an Emmy Award-nominated Nick News correspondent, published author, and creator of Fast Black History on TikTok. She's been recognized by the United Nations and Time Magazine for her impact on history education, and I think you're the first Emmy-nominated person at all that has been on this website or been on this podcast. So please welcome Taylor Cassidy to the show. Taylor, thank you so much for being here. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really fun episode. I bought your book recently. It's called Black History is Your History. It was released in October. I read it and I really, really liked it. You were able to do something that's always been very important to me, which is to take stories about badass figures from history and make them feel like real people and to tell it in a way that's like high energy, exciting. So congratulations on the book. Can you explain it for a minute to our listeners, please?
For sure. Thank you for buying my book. I'm so glad that you liked it. For people who have never heard of me, never heard of my series, the book is based on my web series, Fast Black History. There's over 100 episodes that I've made over the course of 6 years now. And wow. It's really meant to connect history, the past, with your present. And it's meant to make history relatable. So you'll find 12 Black history stories intertwined with 12 personal stories from my life, so that as you're reading about the Black history figure, you're also learning about the lesson that I learned from their story in my personal life. And if you watch my web series, you'll see that I use a bunch of sketches, jokes, pop culture references, and it's the same thing with this book. Like, we have music playlists in there. We have fashion design tutorials. There's a rap. Like the book is truly meant to make it feel like you're on social media watching a very engaging video, but just in book format.
Yes, I thought that was great. I feel like we're kindred spirits. We have like the same passion, which is to kind of tell stories from history in a way that is fun and interesting and not just like a bunch of old people and you have to memorize their birthdays.
Exactly.
So that's kind of what we're going to do today. So we are going to tell a story about a really incredible, badass woman from history. We're going to tell the story of a woman who came from extreme poverty to become an international superstar, then like a badass French resistance agent, a Nazi hunter, a pilot. She's in the Air Force. She's a civil rights hero. She's knighted by the French government and earns a bunch of the highest awards and honors from across the Allied countries. And she was also like a famous actor, singer, comedian, and musician. So Taylor, we're going to talk about Josephine Baker today.
I am so excited because that's the original diva right there. Like,
yes.
Had so much influence. This is perfect person, perfect badass.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the French singers at the time were called divas. So it's perfect. So, okay, we're going to get into the story of Josephine Baker right after this ad break. All right, welcome back to Badass of the Week. The story of Josephine Baker begins in 1906. She is born Frida Josephine McDonald in St. Louis. And Taylor, you're from St. Louis, is that correct?
Yes, that's right. I was in a neighborhood about 30 minutes outside of downtown. And if you actually go to St. Louis, we have a theater called Fox Theater. And it's where all of the touring Broadway shows go. And there's a cafe right next to it. And if you walk in, there's a huge art piece depicting Josephine Baker. So we definitely honor her a lot there.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm going to check it out. I'm going to St. Louis for the first time in April. I'm going to go to a Mariners game at Cardinal Stadium. And I heard that you can go to the top of the St. Louis Arch. I learned this like 3 years ago, and I've been obsessed with the idea of doing that because apparently there's an elevator that takes you to the top. And I haven't looked up any information on this. So I heard that you can go to the top of the arch, and I've been planning on doing this for like 3 years. And I'm like, I've got to go. I got to know how you go to the top of that thing because it doesn't look like the sort of thing that you could take an elevator to the top of.
Oh man, I'm excited for you. Let's just say it's an experience.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll keep the rest a mystery.
Okay. Yeah, do, because I can't wait to see what this is. I've heard it's egg-shaped, but that's all I know. Which is only more confusing. It does not clear anything up for me. Okay, so let's talk about Josephine Baker. She is growing up in the Chestnut Valley neighborhood of St. Louis. And at this time, this is a really impoverished area. And she grows up extremely poor. She'll tell stories later in life about when she was growing up, she slept on cardboard boxes and had to scavenge for food. By age 8, she's sent to work as a live-in maid for a wealthy white family that treats her horribly, up to and including like corporal punishment for putting too much soap in the laundry, stuff like this. This is a hard life. And knowing what we know about her, where she's going to go on to be the most like famous woman on earth, this is a really hard beginning.
Yeah.
So this somehow gets worse in 1917 when there's been a lot of racial tension in St. Louis at the time. A lot of Black people are moving into the area, trying to escape the Jim Crow South. St. Louis is industrializing. There's jobs there, and the companies that run these jobs are doing everything they can to pit the workers against each other, to destabilize labor unions and to not pay people, and to all of this boils over in July of 1917 with it's called the East St. Louis race riots, but that really doesn't cover it. It's basically it's a massacre. It's an attack on the Black population of East St. Louis that involves setting neighborhoods on fire and shooting people. It's horrifying.
I really do wish that more people knew about the East St. Louis riots, because it's a really powerful example of how much economic damage can be done to a Black community whenever it's quite literally destroyed. This happens all over the U.S., but specifically in St. Louis. If you go there and if you live there, you know that East St. Louis is known to be a part of the city where there are a lot of abandoned buildings. It's not very funded. And there is a lot of economic disparity there. So you can see that from 1917, the effects of that lives on to this day.
Right. And it's the thing that when we talk about history that sometimes gets overlooked is that, it's easy to think 1917, that's like World War I, that's like a really long time ago. But my grandma was alive in 1917. Like, this is not that long ago in the history of civilization. This is pretty recent as far as like looking at human history goes. So I think that's something that's easy to kind of put that back. Oh, that was the past, but that wasn't that far back in the past. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind as well, because these effects are still, visible today. Right. So, and for Josephine, this is traumatic, right? She lives on the west bank of the Mississippi. She's on the other side of the river. But she says, quote, "I can still see myself standing on the west bank of the Mississippi, looking at the city of East St. Louis in flames. I saw the sparks flying across the river. I see the people, the poor people, the terrified people running and screaming." And official records put the death toll at 39 Black residents and 9 white residents. But the historians and the NAACP, led by W.E. Du Bois and Martha Greening, established that the actual number of Black deaths was probably closer to like 200. And I mean, this is an extremely traumatic experience for Josephine, as you could imagine. But, just kind of growing up in these extremely harsh conditions and having all of this horrible stuff happening around her, for a lot of people, you just don't get out. It's crushing, right? But for Josephine, she is able to use this as a catalyst. She's like, if I'm going to survive and do anything, I need to get out of here, and I need to get out of here as fast as possible. And she does that.
I really do love that he was able to take this extremely horrible part of her childhood and say to herself, I'm going to be bold, and I'm going to make something of my life, and I'm going to make something that makes this survival worth it. Because like you said, it's very easy to just stay in one place. But for Josephine, she wasn't that kind of person. And it's so interesting to see her look at the trauma of her life and still walk through it, even at such a young age. Like, she was still a child, and that boggles me.
Right. She's 11 when this happens, right? She gets out of town. She runs away from home at 13. She gets married. That doesn't work out. She gets married again at 15. That also doesn't work out. That's where the Baker last name comes from. But this is traumatized. This is traumatic too, right? Like being married at 13.
Yeah.
It's horrifying. And, but eventually she finds a path out of here. She joins a traveling vaudeville, like, acting group. So traveling stage performances. And she joins on. She first is working as like putting people in their costumes, but she's able to get her way on stage. And when she finally does that, they kind of put her at the back at the end of the chorus line. And, she's like not experienced, whatever. They put her back there, and she's like, no, I'm gonna do what I can with this bit piece that I have. And she starts doing these routines where, and these are like live stage performances. There's no cinema or anything like that at this time. And so she would get up there at the end, and she would like purposely mess up the choreography or like trip. She'd do some like physical comedy stuff. She'd make some funny faces, and she'd steal the scene with her like magnetic personality to where by the end of the show, instead of looking at the headliners in the center stage singing and dancing, everybody's watching her because she's the funniest and the most charismatic person on stage. And this, Taylor, this is something that we're going to see from Josephine for like her entire life. This kind of sums her up perfectly.
And you know what? I know that show was 10 times better because she did that.
Oh, yeah.
I wish I could have seen that. Like, 1917? I don't think cameras were invented quite yet.
No, so you could, there's photographs of her from this time period, but not a lot of video. You can find video of her, if you go on YouTube, but it's a lot of the later stuff once she starts becoming a little bit more famous. But this early stuff, like, yeah, I bet it was funny, And so it does work out for her, right? She becomes a headliner, and then she's able to turn that into New York City. She shows up in New York City during the Harlem Renaissance. She's performing on Broadway. She's performing in a musical called Shuffle Along. She's like a Broadway star. And it's not like she went to school for this stuff. Like, she just taught herself, right? She has this magnetic personality, and she just grabs these opportunities when she has them. And, she is becoming a celebrity in New York City. But the problem here is that even though she escaped St. Louis, that she's still running into a lot of the same problems that she encountered there. She's a Broadway star, but she can't get a coffee at the restaurant next door.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me because there are so many performers who end up going to New York, or they have a lot of success in the US. But whenever it comes down to the treatment, no matter how big they are, they're still met with racial tension. And that you can see that all the way up to the 60s, the 70s. So this was definitely not something that was like, oh, a rare thing that happened during that time. And also really cool to know that she was in Shuffle Along, because during the Harlem Renaissance, that was a time when Black artists were finally being able to tell their own stories and benefit from it. Beforehand, it was mostly minstrelsy is the only ways we were able to see ourselves on stage or in movies or in whatnot. So that's really cool that she was in Shuffle Along. I didn't know that she was.
I didn't know much about the history of Shuffle Along, so now we've taught each other something. So she is becoming like a big star, and we do see that, right? We did an episode on Jack Johnson, and Jack Johnson was like the world heavyweight champion, and he's just everywhere he goes, he's got to fight for everything. And you say we see it into the 70s, we still see it today, I think, in a lot of ways, in a lot of places, and that's just it's rough. And so when she gets an opportunity to leave the U.S., she takes it. She gets offered in 1925. She's 19 years old. All of this has happened before she's 20. And she gets offered a job in Paris to dance in Paris. And she's just like, yes, I'm doing it. And this is 1925. She got on a ship and sailed across the Atlantic in a boat because there's no, the passenger liners are not there yet. And she arrives in France. And when she gets off the dock, there's a white man there who recognizes her as being like a famous actress, and he like tips his cap to her, and she's just like, I'm never going back to America. This white stranger was nice to me. I'm here. This is it. I'm French now forever. And that's what happens. She shows up in Paris, and this is the height of the Jazz Age. The Jazz Age kind of enters the French culture towards the end of World War I. You had a group of we've talked about on the show. We've talked about the Harlem Hellfighters. They were a all-black regiment of American soldiers who fought for the French army. But then after the war, a lot of these guys go back to Paris and go back to France, and they start playing jazz, and the French love it. And this is like a really becomes a big movement in France at the time. And a lot of the reason this becomes so popular is because Josephine Baker makes it that. She shows up and she's singing, she's performing at fancy clubs. And this is just like, this is midnight in Paris, literally midnight in Paris, like the time period it's set. You've got James Joyce, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Gertrude Stein, Picasso, Matisse, Dali. Everybody's living in Paris and they're all partying. It's like champagne, party, fancy clubs, music. And these people are all paying money to go watch Josephine Baker perform. And she's made it. She's a celebrity.
I really, really love comparing Josephine Baker to like Beyonce, because I truly do believe like if we were in that time period, she would definitely be Beyonce.
She has to be, right? There's who else? Like even with the acting, the singing, everything. This is not like this predates movie. People aren't going to the cinema. They're not even like if you wanted to. They were not listening to CDs or anything. Maybe there's like some gramophone stuff. But like you want to hear music performed, you want to see a show, you have to go do it in person. And so the people who are acting and performing on stage, they are the big recording artists of the 1920s.
Yeah, and I also noticed that like especially in America. In like the early 1900s, late 1800s, a lot of the times whenever Black artists would be very popular, especially amongst white audiences, it would be more of like a trend or a gimmick. But with Josephine Baker, she really did revolutionize so much because she became something of a luxury. Like if you were going to see Josephine Baker, you were going to something very important, very culturally impactful.
Yes.
And it's amazing.
Yeah. And she just had this star power that nobody else could touch at this time period. She's La Baker. That's what they call her. And she's in the late 1920s. They say she's the most photographed woman on the planet.
Oh my God.
This is like pictures are like coming out now. They're taking pictures of everything. And they're like, oh, she's the most photographed woman on the planet. She's hanging out at nightclubs with Christian Dior and Ernest Hemingway. Hemingway said she was, quote, the most fascinating woman on the planet. She's selling out clubs. She has a pet cheetah named Chiquita who wears a diamond collar and occasionally escapes into the orchestra pit during performances.
What other pet she can have other than a cheetah?
Where'd she get it? Who knows? But she definitely had a pet cheetah named Chiquita, which I love. She buys this massive estate. She buys like a castle basically in the south of France, the Chateau de Milandres. She gets her pilot's license in 1935, learns to fly biplanes. And then in 1937, she marries a French industrialist named Jean Léon and becomes a French citizen. She becomes a citizen of France. She renounces her American citizenship and says she'll never want to go back to a country. She can't be free in a country that treated her like a second-class citizen. Paris is her home, and her most famous song at this time is called like My Two Loves, and it's My Country and Paris. And when she says my country, she means France, and the whole song's in French.
Oh, man.
Mm-hmm. So, everything's great. This is the peak of she's the most famous performer in France at the center of where everybody in the world thinks is the center of culture. And she's the center of culture there. Okay, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how that world started to change as the 30s approached and the threat of Nazi Germany began to loom over Europe. All right, welcome back to Badass of the Week. I'm here with Taylor Cassidy, and we're talking about Josephine Baker. So, okay, it's the late 30s. She's the most famous performer in France, and, things are starting to take a turn in Europe. So towards the end of the 30s, you're starting to get a threat of war with Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany. And sure, I guess she could have left France, but she was never going to do that. She's 33 years old, war is imminent, and the French military intelligence agency, Deuxième Bureau, approaches her for recruitment to see if maybe she could help France. She's recruited by a guy named Jacques Abti. He's the head of counterintelligence for the French, and he's not sure what he's getting. You were saying diva, like Beyonce. He's going in to talk to her, and he's like, "You're the most famous person in the world. Maybe you can talk to some of these German guys and give me try to see if they can give you any secrets that you can pass along to me." But he doesn't know what he's going to get. He's thinking a diva, starlet, whatever, what's going to be on your contract rider kind of thing. And she famously, the second he starts to say anything, she says, quote, "France made me what I am. The Parisians gave me their hearts, and I am ready to give them my life." And for Josephine, I think she saw that the Nazis were trying to make all of Europe like that night that she remembered in St. Louis, and she wasn't going to let them. She's like, I'm in a position now where I can fight back, and I'm going to do that. And I think that's really powerful.
I really love that comparison. Her deciding to collaborate with the military to fight the Nazis reminds me of a woman named Mary Richards in the States. She was a free Black woman, and she decided to go back into slavery to get and act as a spy to get Confederate info and feed it to the Union to help them win the war.
Wow.
And just the thought of that, of realizing that you could lay down your life for something that would make the world better, your country better, that act is so brave. It's incredible. And I'm so inspired by it, especially the fact that Josephine was the most looked at woman in the world. If she was found out, she not only could she be at risk of death, but she could be ruined, you know?
Right.
And she still decided to do that.
Yes, she puts everything on the line, right? This is her last time this happened. She was stuck standing there at 11 years old. And now she's like, I'm going to do something. So she does. And she becomes a powerful agent for the Maquis, for the French resistance. So 1940, late 1930, by 1940, the Germans have taken over France. And the Germans defeat the French in the Battle of France. But she's still, life goes on. She's still a famous performer. She's still in Paris. But, she's going to these clubs, and a lot of these clubs have high-ranking German, Italian, Japanese diplomats, officers, generals, and she's talking to them. She's being friendly with them, talking to them, seeing what she can get from them. She's learning about troop movements. She's learning about secret plans. She's learning about harbors and bases, names of secret agents, and she's passing them along. She also goes on tour. She could travel across these borders with an entourage and a trailer full of costumes, and nobody's gonna stop her. She goes into Portugal. She goes into Spain. She travels around Europe on a music tour. But the Gestapo is there looking for guys in trench coats, like whispering and passing notes to each other. They're not expecting Josephine Baker to roll in with a pet cheetah and like a diamond necklace and like 10 bags full of clothes. They're not going to go through her stuff. So
literally hiding in plain sight.
Exactly. She just walks right in the front door, and she's able to get some information from people, but also the French resistance is able to contact her and give her information. And so she writes notes hidden between the lines of her sheet music for her songs. So that one song, J'ai deux amours, my French sucks, but like I have two loves. Paris, my country and Paris. This predates the whole thing, but she was still singing that song. And between the lines, she would take lemon juice and she would write the notes that she needed to pass along. And apparently, like, this is some World War II secret agent stuff, but like if you write it in lemon juice, it's invisible. But then the guy on the other side, the recipient, can light a lighter underneath it, and the lemon juice burns into the page, and you can read it.
Now that's really cool. I didn't know that. I'm about to use that.
Yeah. I'm curious to try it. I'm recording from my in-laws' house, and I don't want to light anything on fire in here, but I'm going to try it when I get home. So she just carries lemons around, and you're like, I don't know, it's for my cocktails.
Right. For my voice, don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she's getting information, passing it along. She's also receiving it from like other agents and passing it along. She would get secret photos and documents, and when she would travel, there was stories that she would hide them in her underwear. And Jacques Dabty was like, well, what if you get strip searched? She's like, nobody's going to strip search Josephine Baker. We're good. That's not happening. And she was right. The border guards were asking for her autograph instead of trying to search her or question her. Like the guys that were, the German spies were asking for her autograph and stuff. Yeah.
Badass.
It's badass, right? She also has that castle in the south of France, and she turns it into a place where she can house resistance fighters and hide weapons. So her luxury estate becomes a cell for the movement. It's a safe house. And there's a story where, she's stockpiling weapons and things in secret rooms in her giant castle house. And downed Allied pilots are hiding there on their way through to Spain. There's a story where towards the end of 1940, she was actually starting to come under a little bit of suspicion, and the Gestapo came to her house, and she had a couple of like Nazi agents come in to question her. And she just kind of sat there and was like, I don't know anything. I'm just some, diva starlet. But there was like 5 resistance agents like hiding in her pantry with like machine guns and stuff, trying not to make noise. I think about the beginning of Inglourious Bastards, but she was doing this for real. But then imagine like Beyonce doing that.
Oh my gosh. I knew she was a great actress. Yeah. Because I would have been shaking in my boots.
Yeah, just dedicated, right? Dedicated, was not going to let these guys have it. They was not going to give them what they wanted. She said she played, quote, a silly stage girl who knew nothing about politics.
I know she pulled out that character from whenever she was performing in the troupe.
Oh, I love that. Stumbling, falling down. Oops.
Like, I don't know what's going on.
I just spilled a bunch of tea on your fancy Hugo Boss Nazi uniform. I guess you're going to have to go home and change. But once they came to her house, she's like, it's too real. I got to go. Like, she can't stay. She gets away there. So she goes to North Africa. She goes to Morocco and Algeria, where the Free French are fighting. She gets hospitalized in Casablanca for 19 months. She gets an infection, and she's hospitalized there. But her hotel room is being visited by reporters and journalists and photographers and stuff. And she's able to use that to like pass notes between the Americans and the British and the French about what's going on with the Germans. And so American and British diplomats would visit her for tea, but they're actually there to pick up intelligence reports that she's getting from Abti and the French counterintelligence guys in France. And like, that's cool. So in 44, she actually survives a plane crash at one point during this time. Her plane crashes off the coast of Morocco. And the story goes that like she was okay. Like it was like a transport plane. So there was a bunch of guys on it. She was okay. And then, when they were like, Josephine Baker, like superstar, you got to get out of here. She's like, no. Like people are actually injured in there. Don't give me a life vest until we get everybody else out of here. And so she made sure everybody got out of the wreck, especially like the wounded, before she allowed them to bring her to safety. And I think that's really cool too. And then like while they were riding in the ambulance, she's like performing for the injured people so that they don't like make them feel better.
Okay. First of all, continuing to be a spy while you're literally in a hospital bed, with dire infection, getting into a plane crash, and the first thing you're thinking is, when is the soonest I could put a smile on these people's faces?
Yeah. These guys, they think they're going to die, right? They're badly wounded in a plane crash. And she's like, let me sing you a song while we're in the ambulance. Like,
that's a different type of mindset. I got to get on my game.
Right.
Like, oh my goodness.
It's amazing, right? And then she keeps going. In 44, she was a pilot. She learned to fly because she saw biplanes and she thought they were awesome. So she wanted to learn how to fly them. So she did, which is just very Josephine Baker, just like, I want to do this. So she did it. She joins the Free French Air Force in 1944, the Women's Auxiliary, and she she's commissioned a sub-lieutenant and spends the war driving ambulances, doing fundraising stuff. She performed for the troops, like some USO kind of stuff, and she spends her own money to buy heating supplies, foods, other kind of medical gear for the soldiers that are fighting for the Free French. And she travels along with them, riding in jeeps and sleeping in tents. She's a soldier for the last year and a half of the war. So by the time the war ends, she's like, she had been secretly an agent. And then by the end of it, she is like front and center wearing a French military uniform on stage. She is now like a symbol of the resistance, a symbol of the Maquis for exceptional services to France. Charles de Gaulle, who's the overall commander of the French forces, he gives her the Croix de Guerre and the Rosette de la Résistance. These are the two highest military honors that France has, like basically double Medal of Honors for the French government. And the day that Paris is liberated, she's on like one of the first jeeps into town wearing her uniform, and everybody's like having this huge, they have this huge parade. And so she's kind of front and center for it. And can you just imagine, if we want to keep the Beyonce comparison here, like, I picture the cheetah sitting shotgun,
Oh my gosh. That would truly be a sight to see. Like, I feel like I would have loved to time travel back to that time and see a Black woman at the forefront of a parade, knowing that everybody there could see that she helped with the country's liberation. Mm-hmm. That would be so amazing to see in real life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just an incredible person, right? Just to get into that level of global celebrity. I mean, because if we think back, like she has nothing, right? She comes from nothing. And then to come out here and now you're riding at the head of the Paris Liberation Parade as like a symbol of the resistance. That's awesome.
And can you imagine people in America seeing this, Black people in America seeing this and seeing how much they could accomplish if only laws in America would allow them to be great and have that sort of ability? Mm-hmm. It must have been so inspiring.
It was, I think. And she does a little bit of work she comes back to America after the war. She's a famous celebrity. They wanted her to travel all over the world. So she comes back to the US, and this kind of is the beginning of her activism phase, where she had kind of fought the Nazis and now she's ready to like keep fighting for civil rights. And so she goes back and goes on tour in the U.S., but she's like, I'm not going to perform for any segregated audience. Like if you want me to come, you have to desegregate your venue. And a lot of places do this, especially Las Vegas. Las Vegas wants her, but they have segregated shows. And she's like, I'm not coming. I'm not going to perform. I'll perform for the first one that desegregates. And they stepped all over each other to do it so that they could get her. There's a story where she was at the Stork Club in New York, which is like a fancy club there. And she was hanging out with Grace Kelly. And they were like, oh, we can't serve you here. And she's like, fine, I'm leaving. And then Grace Kelly was like, I'm leaving too. And then there was like a bunch of other movie stars there who were also like, we're leaving, we're going. And they're like, actually, let me get the manager. They desegregated the Stork Club that moment. She's using it to make change, right? She's affecting change with her own force of personality. She was Woman of the Year from the NAACP in 1951. And of course, she also ended up on J. Edgar Hoover's radar because the FBI was hunting down communists. And all of this seems very communist to him, I guess. Nothing came of it. She's like, dude, I stared down the Gestapo with 3 Maquis agents hiding in my pantry. You're going to have to do better than this. Nothing ever comes of that, but it is worth mentioning that she was so effective at implementing change that the FBI got scared.
Yeah, and that's usually what happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you start making a wave for equality and civil rights, all of a sudden the FBI is like, communism?
Did you file all of your tax returns correctly? Did you checked every box? You sure? You got to have done something wrong in your life, right?
Right.
So she continues in 1961. She's awarded the Chevalier de Légion d'Honneur, which is basically France doesn't have nobility, but this is, Chevalier means knight. She's basically knighted in France. She's accepted to like the highest order of like famous people or whatever government service. And during the speech, they're like, yes, we knew that she's like a famous musician, famous dancer, but this is because this is for her work as a sub-lieutenant in the French Air Force and her fundraising for the resistance. So that's pretty cool. And then in 1963, she comes back to the US. She's 57 years old. And she comes back because Martin Luther King asks her to speak at the March on Washington. And so she does. She comes back. She stands on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in her full military uniform from the French Air Force, decorated with every medal of honor, the French have, and looks out at the crowd and says, quote, "I have walked into the palaces of kings and queens and into the houses of presidents, but I could not walk into a hotel in America and get a cup of coffee, and that made me mad. And when I get mad, I open my big mouth. And then look out, because when Josephine opens her big mouth, they hear it all over the world."
And people know that, going back to the bar where she was like, I'm leaving. And everybody else in there said, I'm leaving too.
Yep.
I love that. The fact that she knew her influence and she knew that people seeing her up there with all of her military honors, they're looking at somebody who knows that what she says, she means, and she's already fought for it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And she found it, right? When she gets to France, that's what she was able to find a life where she could do those things, right? Where she could escape the problems that were happening in the United States at the time. And, she gets up there. She's the only woman that speaks at the rally. She's standing next to Martin Luther King, which is pretty cool. Okay, so she lives long enough to have a big performance for her 50 years of show business. In Paris in 1975, she does this big show to celebrate like her 50th year in show business. She dies a few days after the performance at age 68. She's buried with full French military honors. She's the only American-born woman to ever receive a 21-gun salute in France. And then many years after that, in November of 2021, she gets the greatest honor France can bestow. She's pantheonized, which puts her, she's inducted into the Pantheon in Paris, which is the mausoleum reserved for like the greatest heroes of France. She's the first American-born citizen of any gender or race to be enshrined in the Pantheon, and also the first musician or performing artist to be interred there. So you can watch the induction of into the Pantheon on YouTube, because this was only a few years ago, and it's really powerful. I think that that's a really great end for her story, and and her story kind of is eternal. Like, you can go on YouTube now and listen to her perform. You can listen to her sing. You can watch her dance. You can see it's not great quality, but you can watch her perform. And I think that just really kind of, it feels very powerful to watch that.
Now, you definitely taught me something there, because I didn't know that she got an honor just a few years ago. And the fact that it's the highest honor in France, that makes me so happy.
Yeah, it was 5 years ago. And yeah, so the Pantheon is for like, I mean, it's the big deal, right? It's all the greatest heroes of France, but she's in there.
She's amazing. And the fact that, especially for Black culture, her impact on fashion and artist performance still happens to this day. It's amazing.
Right. Just everything kind of, that's the thing that I really like with history, because I'll do talks at schools and stuff and people will be like, I don't care about history. And it's like, you might not care about the history of politics and military and, the stuff that we learn in history class. You might not care about aqueducts and, Roman emperors, but everything has a history, right? Cars, music, fashion, all of this stuff. It goes back to, one thing I would love to do with music is to find a band that I like and then find who they list as their influences and then listen to those bands. And then, I read Keith Richards' book and he talks about all these bands I'd never heard of before. And he's like, I heard these guys and they were awesome. You can go find them and listen to them. And you're like, oh, you can kind of see how they developed it, right? Nobody had done for the guitar what Jimi Hendrix was doing for the guitar. But then you get a whole generation after that who grow up listening to that. And they're like, I want to learn how to do that. How can I improve upon that? And it just, it just grows from there. I think that's what Josephine Baker does for jazz and still does today.
Yes, that's the most exciting part about history is finding what came before. And then whenever you listen to or participate in the art or the hobby that you love present day, you're better educated to be able to see certain things, certain Easter eggs where you're like, I know where that came from, or I know the story behind that. Like, that's the most exciting thing. That's how I feel with Josephine Baker. Whenever I saw years ago, Rihanna got like an award for fashion at the CFDA, and her entire outfit was directly inspired by Josephine Baker. Down to the hairstyle. Yes. Like Josephine Baker was very much known for her extravagant, glittery outfits, and she always had her hair slicked down, I believe, with like oil. Like It was like a very slicked down kind of pixie hairstyle. And that's the kind of outfit that Rihanna wore. And she shared later that it was inspired by Josephine Baker.
I love that. So that's it, right? It's just, I like things that are circular like that. It's very, historians love this, as you know. And so I guess what we should do here, you do it with your book at the end of every chapter. I do it at the end of every Badass of the Week episode where we say like, what's the lesson here? You kind of relate them to stories from your life. What we usually do on the show is to say, what can we learn from the story of Josephine Baker that we can apply to our lives to make ourselves more badass?
What inspires me so much about Josephine Baker's life is that he used her art to fight fascism. And I think especially right now with free speech being attacked, Black history exhibits being taken down, a lot of people, a lot of creatives, I find, are growing tired. They're wondering, what's the purpose of making art during this time when everything is chaotic, everything is so depressing. And I feel like Josephine Baker is the perfect story to show you that art can be a tool for justice. It can be a tool for change and fighting back. So for me, I take away to make my life more badass is to never underestimate your talent, your art, whatever you're interested in, because it can always be used to do something phenomenal.
Yeah.
Just like
Woody Guthrie's guitar in 1943 during the war, he famously wrote, "This machine kills fascists" on his guitar, and he would perform with it. Yeah, I love that idea of, yes, art is powerful. And yes, she does get involved. I mean, she does put her life at risk and, is basically literally standing in front of bullets to defend her cause. But she's also able to use her art and her talents to affect change on a very real and like tactable, is that a word? I don't even know. Whatever, a very real way. Okay. Well, Taylor Cassidy, thank you so much for coming on the show and helping me tell the story of Josephine Baker. I guess I should say we recorded like the first 15 minutes of this episode, and then I realized I hadn't hit record. And so I'm really happy that you like didn't just immediately quit on me when I was like, we have to do the first 15 minutes of this episode again.
No. Of course.
Okay, the show is cursed with this stuff. I can't help it. I don't know. But I do appreciate you. And thank you so much for coming on here. Black History is Your History is available now, and I highly recommend it. Taylor, where can people find you and more of your work?
You can find Black History is Your History in stores nationwide. And you can find me on all social media at Taylor Cassidy.
All right. Thank you so much. It was awesome getting to talk to you. And thanks for helping me tell the story, Josephine Baker.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun. And I learned so much.
Me too. It's the great thing about having fun guests. All right. And thanks to all of you out there for listening to this episode. We do this every week. If you enjoyed this, please do the like and subscribe thing. It really helps us out. And until then, we'll see you next week. So stay badass. Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content and $7 Productions. Executive producers are Dwayne Johnson, Danny Garcia, Andrew Jacobs, Hiram Garcia, Brian Gewirtz, Frankie Chaparino, and of course, me, Ben Thompson. Writing is by me and my semi-regular but always awesome co-host, Dr. Patricia Larish. Story editing by Ian Jacobs. Our mixing, music, and sound design is done by the incomparable Jude Brewer. Production support by Jean McHale-Waite. Badass of the Week is based on my website, badassoftheweek.com, where you can read all sorts of stories about other badasses. If you want to reach out with questions or ideas, you can email us at badasspodcast@badassoftheweek.com. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, follow, listen, tell your friends, and tell your enemies. And please leave us a review. If you want to support Badass of the Week, please check out our Patreon page. We'll be back next week with another one.